Really want to know, you talk to my next guest, Scott Faughn. Good morning, Scott Faughn.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
Publisher of the Missouri Times, host of the show on ABC 30, right? This Week in Missouri Politics?
This Week in Missouri Politics.
How was the show yesterday?
It was good. We had David Steelman on. You talk about a guy that when you really want to know something, you talk to David Steelman. If he doesn't know it, he can get somebody on the text in 2 seconds. It does.
All right, there you go. Let's get to the polls. What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
It's tightening. I think all the polls are showing the same thing. It's a tightening race. The question is, when you get a race this tight in a general election like this, it depends on who turns out. So whatever poll could be correct, it is a poll of the people they're polling, and I think people do a reasonably good sample. It's just who's going to turn out.
Right.
I really think what's happening is this. I think the Democrats were always going to turn out. They hate Donald Trump. They were all turning out.
Right.
The Republicans got ticked off about Kavanaugh, and now they're going to turn out. In the state of Missouri, if all the Republicans and all the Democrats turn out, the Republican wins. Right now, there was a time in our state where the Democrat won. I think that the problem for Republicans, funny enough, is they probably should have confirmed Kavanaugh about 2 weeks ago, not a month ago.
Right.
And so we just live in a society where people do not have a long attention span. I do think that the intensity is reasonably high. I think Donald Trump being here, look, I get it. If you're inside 270, you probably don't like him. But you get out to Franklin County, he could be emperor of Franklin County. And he's been to Columbia, where, look, I know what you're thinking. College town. Yes, everyone that works at that college hates Donald Trump and would stab him in the face.
Right.
But everybody that lives out in Ashland, a little outside of town, they love him.
Right.
Going to Cape Girardeau tonight, couldn't pick a better spot. Cape Girardeau, Trump won the Missouri Republican primary, and he won Southeast Missouri so much. See, voters, I'm from the Boot Hill. You know, we care about values. It's kind of like a wink and a nod about values. You can say 2 Corinthians, and we know you don't read the Bible. We overlook it. You can sleep with a porn star, and we kind of expect it or are jealous. Then you get down to Southwest Missouri, it's a little different. I think the Senate race is tightening because, oddly enough, in every poll, Claire McCaskill's been missing her mark in Kansas City. The Kansas City Star is frankly more respected in Kansas City than the Post is here. So if you're thinking just because it's mainstream media, I get you. But in Kansas City, the Star has a little bit better reputation than the Post does in St. Louis. They've been running some pretty impactful stories. They said Hawley's office ran out of Washington. Well, it was kind of an accusation. Well, now they've got some emails that maybe show that. And I think that's hurt him in Kansas City, where he was running better than anybody thought he should. Is probably a soft lead anyhow. I think she's hitting more of a regular Democrats mark in Kansas City. Bottom line is it's going to be, folks, it's going to be urban versus rural. It's going to be Velvet versus Carhartt.
The argument was, Scott Faughn of the Missouri Times, that the Republicans win rural Missouri, Claire McCaskill wins Kansas City and St. Louis City, and it will come down to St. Louis County. Is that still true tomorrow?
No, I think that is probably a 10 years ago view of it. Look, in St. Louis County, you got a guy like Paul Berry hustling it, underfunded, but he's hustling it. You got some Republicans that are in very tight state rep races down in South County. You got David Gregory, Gene Evans, a couple open seats that are competitive. So both parties are having to spend money in it, but I think what it comes down to is, does Claire McCaskill get 30% in Texas County, or does she get 35%? She's always been able to get 35%. This time, does that margin that she does better than the way Jay Nixon won? He would win Greene County.
Right.
Can she do that again? I think St. Louis County is a Democrat county and is becoming overwhelmingly more so. And that is just, it'll be just like she's trying to win, 20% in Butler County, where I'm from. It's going to be, can the Republican get 30% in St. Louis County?
So how does it happen that 2 years ago, Josh Hawley got more votes than everybody else in the state? Donald Trump won by 20%, and if this election's all about Trump, why is it neck and neck?
Well, Claire McCaskill is an excellent politician, and look, Josh Hawley is not Donald Trump. There is very little about Josh Hawley that's like Trump, except for, I think Josh Hawley knows that Donald, if he gets elected to the U.S. Senate, it will be 100% because the Donald said so. Mm-hmm. And so I think that he will vote like Donald Trump wants him to vote. And I don't think Trump has a problem calling a marker, right? I think he gets him in the Oval Office and says, son, you would be back in Jefferson City but for me.
Right.
And I think Trump is coming here because he thinks he's got to win and he can stamp his seal of approval. Look, I'm a big admirer of Roy Blunt. Roy Blunt's not a U.S. Senator if Ted Cruz is the nominee. Donald Trump elected Roy Blunt, too.
Right. Yes, and Roy Blunt didn't get 50% of the vote.
I think the reason Josh Hawley got the most votes, let's say Eric Schmidt, right? you have to be a lawyer to run for AG. So there were third-party candidates for treasurer and secretary of state. All three of those got about the same amount of votes, but you couldn't. No libertarian could file because you have to be an attorney to file.
Right.
So I think Hawley is a popular guy. He's on either a ladder or a roller coaster, whatever you want to say.
Right.
But I think that his margin was tied to Donald Trump's victory. And again, it will be, can Donald Trump pass off that 19-plus margin onto one of the greatest politicians in the history of the state, Claire McCaskill? Those Republicans that say she's a bad senator, all these attacks, I don't think that's true. I do think it's fair to say you found a reason to vote for every one of Obama's nominees. If you're going to say you're a moderate, you probably should find a reason to vote for one of Trump's. She hasn't found a reason to vote for either two of his nominees. If you're going to say you're moderate, you kind of got to be one.
Right. Think back. This was Ann Wagner was rearranging the deck chairs so that she could take on Claire McCaskill. Josh Hawley swooped in last minute. The powers that be in the party sort of picked him in the quote-unquote smoke-filled rooms. How much different would it be, and this is impossible to ask or answer, but I'll ask anyway, how different would it be if Ann Wagner was running against Claire McCaskill?
Well, a more educated man would find a way not to answer the question, but I'm just a simple hillbilly, so I'll tell you. I think Ann Wagner would be doing better. I think Ann Wagner, if there was a man in this seat, in her second congressional seat, I think she'd probably lose. I think Ann Wagner would be doing better in St. Louis County, in some tougher places. And yeah, I think you couldn't have predicted it last 4th of July whenever they made the decision.
Right.
But today, yeah, I think Ann Wagner will run stronger than most Republicans in the second. She'll probably run stronger than Hawley. And I think she could have made a case. I think rural voters, they're not voting for Hawley anyway. They're voting for Trump's guy. And I think she might have made a case to some suburban women that maybe did vote for Trump but don't like to admit it anymore at a cocktail party.
Right.
She might have made a better case for him. So I'd say there's probably some truth to that.
So you're saying that Ann Wagner probably would have sort of blocked Claire McCaskill in some ways in St. Louis County.
Yes, and I think in rural Missouri, where maybe they wouldn't have been inclined, which suburban woman you want to vote for, you're probably voting for the man you love more than sometimes Jesus and sometimes close to Whitey Herzog, Donald Trump votes for.
Right, so you're saying if you're voting for Hawley, you would have voted for Ann Wagner anyway.
You'd have voted, as long as Trump was here saying she's the person, I think that had no problem being one.
Right.
I think what may be interesting is the conversation here Wednesday morning. I think Hawley probably is in the position, but it's tightening, no question. He was probably, after Kavanaugh, after the Democrats just made what is one of the most embarrassing spectacles I've ever seen people get caught on TV. I think after that, he was going to win. It's tightening. I think a little bit that's due to the start. A little bit that's just due to the glow wears off anymore in America. Right. I think if they had to do it again, they'd have confirmed him maybe today and had the big fight and stuff. So I don't know. I think Hawley's still going to win. I'll give you a Stein of Knowledge prediction. I think you might see Eric Schmidt filling that role sometime later in the week. He might be the next Attorney General from right here in St. Louis County.
That's now who decides that?
The governor and the governor alone.
Really, it's his choice.
His choice. If the seat's filled and somebody vacates it for any reason, the governor replaces him.
So if Josh Hawley is elected, then the Attorney General's office is vacant, and then Mike Parson can pick anybody he wants.
I guess you got to be a lawyer, so maybe not me and you. But
right. And so he would pick treasurer Eric Schmidt.
I'll make you a Stein of Knowledge prediction. I'd say that's probably the top choice right now.
Okay, then who becomes treasurer?
I'll bet you she has a different biological makeup than you or I.
She has a different biological makeup.
I bet she's a woman.
Oh, okay. I got you. All right, good. And you have any comments on the medical marijuana stuff?
Going to pass.
All three of them?
I think all three pass. I think the statutory one, the proposition doesn't really matter because the constitutional ones will trump it. I think it comes down to does 2 or 3 win. Look, this guy, Brad Bradshaw, look, if you and I decided we was going to pay $1 million and have a marijuana ballot initiative, I actually think I'm petty enough, I know I am, that I'd put Scott Faughn in charge of it too. I'd put Scott Faughn in the Constitution.
Is the state really going to put one guy in charge of medical marijuana?
Well, now, do you read those things? Do you really read those ballot measures, or you just vote on the top line?
I vote. Well, no, I'm smart enough. I don't have to read the ballot.
Okay, well, me and all your listeners, we just read the top line and we vote, and so I think you're going to medical marijuana. Yeah, why should the government tell you what you can smoke and what you can't smoke?
Right.
Folks that are on the fence, you have to get a doctor's card, which I bet you'll take all of 12 seconds to have it go in there and say, Doc, I feel a little nervous about the Cardinals off season, and they'll write you a script. I don't think it's going to be too big a problem to get one, and you know what? Maybe that's the way it ought to be. But I think 2 probably gets more votes, and that's what it comes down to. Who gets more votes, 2 or 3? I think 2 gets more votes. Look, there's going to be some lawyers, but I think bottom line is you're going to have some very, very wealthy people with some dispensaries in this state. If you want to smoke pot here in about 6 months, you're going to be able to do it legally.
What about clean Missouri? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a terrible idea. I mean, look, I know that anything, it's fashionable for demagogues to say anything that we've been doing, period, is terrible and awful.
Right.
And I get that. But I think that clean Missouri, the ethics reform stuff, let me just tell you know how it really works in Jeff City? Really? They say you can't have a lobbyist gift, right? Well, the lobbyist gift your campaign account $5,000 before session, and then you just pay for your own entree, right?
Right.
And maybe you eat a little off the appetizer, and maybe the pencil whipping ain't that great, but they just buy it out of their campaign account and won't nothing change in Jeff City except for under a lobbyist gift. If you and I wanted to go look up who was at a dinner with who and how much it cost, we could do that now.
Right.
Under clean Missouri, you won't be able to do that. And so all the ethics stuff, if you can get money out of politics, that's good for you. Congratulations. But this doesn't do that. And I think the redistricting part's bad. I think that it's bad for rural Missouri. But what it's going to be bad for, in my opinion, is if you're an African American lawmaker, you're going to have a harder time getting elected. The fact is, we all like to talk about how it should be. African Americans vote for African Americans, and white people vote for white people. The overwhelming amount of the time. Now, there's obviously exceptions, but for the most part in our history, that's been the case. I think you're gonna have folks. Look, if you're a representative and you have one school district, that school's opinion matters to you.
Right.
You know more about it, but if you get strung out across 6, you don't know. You can't know 6 districts. You really don't care. Maybe the one you live in.
And the 6 districts might be competing issues.
Absolutely.
Right.
I think the way it's done now, look, Democrats get a bad shake on this. They do. But it's not because of the system. The system's done by judges, which, let's be honest, even the Republican judges we know are kind of Democrats. I mean, you go to law school, they just crank out a bunch of conservatives over there at law schools. So I would say that right now the problem for Democrats is they're smushed right up on the state line in Kansas City and St. Louis, and they live in very densely populated areas. There ain't no high-rises in Potosi, Missouri,
right,
except at the jail, and I don't know how they vote, but they're spread out, so you can draw the districts differently. That's the Democrats' problem, is we're looking right now, I'm looking out the window here, and I can see 12 high-rises people live in.
Right.
You can't cut those up. They probably all vote overwhelmingly Democrat. In rural Missouri, our trailer parks are real good and spread out.
Right. What are you looking for tomorrow? When are you going to know? What are you going to be looking for tomorrow?
It's different. Early voting is a big deal in the cities because there's lines. In rural Missouri, there's no lines in Centerville, Missouri to vote, so people don't care. They just stop by. In rural Missouri, you might not go to town every day right where your polling place is. They're more spread apart. So early voting is not as big a deal in the rural areas as the urban areas. I think you're going to see campaigns in St. Louis County, which is another reason it'll continue to be more Democrat. They're going to get you out over the course of the early voting time. Let's see what the early voting number actually is in St. Louis County. Then look at like Greene County or go down to Newton County, Joplin. See what their lines are like tomorrow. That'll tell you a lot. And then look, I think what's going to matter is turnout. I think this race is so close that it's not an overwhelming opinion of Missourians one way or the other. It's going to be who shows up. So.
Are we going to have a winner tomorrow night?
Absolutely. These races break late and they break hard. I think it'll be a 3 or 4 point race at the end of the day, and I think it all depends on who is motivated to turn out. It used to be will the people that protest and will the people that in the cities that tweet a lot, will they actually show up and vote? Now it's will that guy that old white guy that likes Trump, will he go vote when Trump's not on the ballot? And we'll see.
Scott Faughn, publisher of the Missouri Times.
Can I give one quick shout out?
You can do anything you want.
My daughter Millie and the Cheer Legends group from Chesterfield won first place at the cheerleading competition.
That's what I'm talking
about. Could not be prouder.
Were you coaching them?
Not in any way. That's why they won. Their winning is proof evidence of it.
The publisher of the Missouri Times, host of This Week in Missouri Politics, ABC 30. What time on Saturdays, Sundays?
11 o'clock. We'll see who was right and who was wrong on Sunday.
11 o'clock, right after This Week with George Stephanopoulos? Right before.
Right after. Really skinny, articulate guy comes on, then a fat German comes on right afterwards.
Scott Faughn, always welcome here. Thanks for coming in on a busy day.
Thank you, sir.